Hi, everybody. It's Mike Young, lifestyle nutritionist with aPlantBasedDiet.org. Welcome to chapter 125 of my book, Live to 150. This one is on consciousness and mindfulness. I kind of just threw those two together in the same chapter. And this kind of touches on some of the subjects we've discussed earlier in the book, but I just want to dedicate one chapter to these concepts. Because if you think about it, if you're familiar with mindfulness and consciousness, consciousness is kind of like being awake and recognizing what's actually going on. Most people are really unconscious with the way they do things. A lot of this goes back to a few chapters back where I mentioned brainwashing. They don't even realize they were brainwashed. They think they're making decisions on their own when they in reality they've never made any real decisions on their own in their entire lives. And part of consciousness and having some kind of awakening and just mindfulness in general. Mindfulness is kind of like the practice, the daily practice, I'd say, of consciousness, just being mindful, because you have to be aware. You have to constantly remind yourself that most people are asleep, most people are unconscious, most people kind of like are just almost like living more like animals than humans, kind of like the herd mentality. And almost all the concepts in this book are not, at this point in time, 2022, going to be accepted by the general public because they are just living in an unconscious state, or they're living in such a state of fear that they cannot, you know, they cannot operate in the way that they probably think they should, because it would literally destroy them, because there so many people are just making all their decisions based in fear rather than faith. It's not, I should probably need to do a chapter just on those things to discuss those. But once you awaken and once you start to raise your level of consciousness, all these things that I'm discussing here in the book will make sense, and you'll understand more as to why you want to do these things. You'll also understand that, when you wonder why someone would do this and someone would act like that, you it makes a lot more sense as to the fact that they're at such a low level of consciousness that that's all they're going to be able to do, at least unless they do some internal work and recognize that there's something else potentially going on that is more beneficial to them that they were not made aware of for most of their lives. And that is very difficult for a lot of people, because you hear like a lot of people won't change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, that kind of thing. And it is very difficult. It's almost like when you have, a child that was totally undisciplined and had all kinds of bad habits. Yeah, it is possible that they can turn into an adult who's very responsible, but the reality is not highly probable. It's a lot more work that has to take place in the later to mid to later years to correct those things than would have been necessary in the early years. But still, we're in a transition period in society where almost everyone doesn't understand these things. So we're in that much harder work time frame of the mid to later years, and that's how we're having to get through to a lot of people. I am seeing that, a lot of people who are a lot younger in years, that there's a greater percentage of people who are conscious and awake of what's going on. It's not a massive percentage, but at least there is some segment of society that I'm seeing that's out there. Whereas as I see people who are my age, which is 52 and older, there's almost nobody. I mean, there are a few outliers, and that's it. But when I look at the younger, I see more people. So I am very hopeful that this message is getting across. And if you kind of, find any value, please share the links to these videos. Let people know, because like, I wouldn't necessarily start off with this one. This is why it's more near the end of the book. If you are, a diehard fan here and you really want to take things to the next level, you're going to read through the whole book and you get to this chapter and it's going to make sense to you. But it wouldn't make sense in the very beginning. I talked about this kind of idea in the beginning, but it was at a much lower, more relatable level to people. But it still was incredibly challenging, and that's why I didn't think it was good to put that in the beginning of the book. I need to move that near the end of the book. And let me know where you guys are on your journey, because like I said, this is a journey. It's just an evolution for people, including myself. And as I've alluded to, and as I've stated to here in the past in this book, I feel like, I really did make some good decisions early on in my life, and I didn't realize it for what they were at the time until these decades and decades have unfolded to where like I always knew something was wrong and I was just doing something about it and I didn't even know why. I had like zero support from anybody anywhere with some of these things, and most of them involved the lifestyle, the diet. I didn't have any framework, didn't have any structure, didn't have any mentors in this area. But if I could do that, then you guys could certainly do it today and to a much more impactful degree where you're going to help out yourself more through more of your life and you're also going to help out others. So hopefully you can, and let me know your ages down there in the comments and let me know like when you feel like you got to this awakening, this higher level of consciousness that you're at now. Like what had to happen, and where were you? Was there a certain event that made that for you? Because a lot of times, like with the health, I've talked about this in previous chapters, it's either like you're a deep thinker, which I think I am, or you've had some kind of a major health crisis, and that's when you're kind of shocked into making the change. I mean, if there's another reason or why this enlightenment process has happened for you, please let us know so we can kind of discuss that in the comments. And of course, like the video if you got some value out of it, and subscribe so that you will get notified of our next chapter. See you in the next chapter. Bye-bye.